There's been talk, some disputed, some not, and some just rumors, that you've got all these guys in AEW with this wealth of knowledge in the back. You got, Arn Anderson was around, Tully Blanchard was around, William Regal's around, Jim Ross, a lot of older people, and that the younger wrestlers aren't taking advantage of that. They're not listening. You told me a story a long time ago about Ricky Morton visiting developmental, where people didn't listen, or they weren't showing him. They weren't like walking over going, God dang, Ricky Morton, tell me how to get people to cheer for me, because that's what you're kind of the best at ever.
And I broke down and cried. Yep.
Is that a problem in AEW where the young wrestlers are already TV stars, so they feel maybe they don't need to improve their craft by going to a William Regal or going to a Tully Blanchard? Like, how could you be a heel and not go up to Tully Blanchard and ask for advice, right?
He's the greatest working heel of all time. There's no one. I mean, him, in my opinion, him and Fit Finley, the two greatest working heels in wrestling in the last 40 years.
Wow.
But I don't want to say it's a problem, because I don't really, honestly, I don't think that the guys think, oh, I'm a big TV star, I don't need to get, I don't need to get any kind of affirmation from them. I think what it is the culture now, not just in AEW, in the world. And I think people don't like to be told you're wrong. And I don't think people like when other people are slightly abrasive to them and how they explain things. And so if someone went up to Tully Blanchard and say, hey, did you watch my match? Yeah. What'd you think? Well, I thought the match sucked. Tully would say that, Tully wouldn't sugarcoat anything. And so I think that they're afraid of that. And listen, I've been there where I've been intimidated to go up to Tully Blanchard, to go up to an Arn Anderson, who and he is an incredible human being, and he'll talk to anybody in a second. But I was Jake the Snake Roberts, same thing. I was intimidated because these are the guys that I looked up to.
Sure.
So I was afraid of going up to them and saying the wrong thing.
Right.
So I don't know if I don't know what goes through their head. If they do think I've already made it, then they're fucking wrong and they're fucking stupid. But if they're saying, oh man, I'm kind of where I don't want to bother him, or I'm afraid of him, I'm afraid of what he'll say, I get that. I understand that. But there's got to come a time where you come out of that shell, because if you don't, you're never going to get better. Because like I said on a teaser, our generation didn't have the benefit of working with a certain group of guys. There were just a few, and that was like Sean and Taker and Hunter, that lasted for a little while, but none of our generation got to work with them.
Right.
And so the only way we can learn is by asking. There are no more road trips, really, especially with guys like, you hear the great stories about riding with Harley Race, or, riding down the mid-Atlantic roads with Dennis Condrey and Bobby Eaton and Jim Cornette in the back, and listening to Dennis Condrey explain psychology. Like those days are gone. So you have to come out of your shell, and you have to ask these people who have done something in this business, how, why, what they need to do, and that's the only way you're going to get better.
Any chance you could highlight, I don't want to just get on the negative, let's get on the positive. Any chance you could highlight a young wrestler in AEW who is hungry, who wants the knowledge, who's voracious, who's who has that respect and is going up to these guys and teach me, tell me more? Who is in that category?
Absolutely. Honestly, there's a ton of them. There's a lot more like that than there aren't. Preston Vance stays to the end of the show. I see so many young guys, and I've seen it in WWE too, but so many young guys, and I see so many extra talent as well, leaving before the show is over, and it blows my mind. If you want to be the main event of the show, and you've been doing this for a cup of coffee, and you can't stay and watch the main event and see why they are the main event, you have no place in my business. But Preston Vance, he stays to the very end of the show. I don't mean just Dynamite. I mean, he stays through Rampage. He asks questions. He is front and center at the monitor. Let's see, Lee Johnson, another example of someone who wants to learn, asks advice. Top Flight as well. Both guys who have asked me multiple times to sit down and watch their matches. Anthony Bowens. A slew of great guys. And then on top of that, Paul White, Mark Henry, they stay there and they watch to the end of the show.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And
Respect.
yeah, man, you're missing out. If you're a professional wrestler and you work for us, you're missing out.
It seems like Tony Khan has created a great atmosphere for those who wanted to learn. And so you're saying any kind of notion that AEW has a problem with young wrestlers not approaching older wrestlers outside of the problem we have in society is kind of an overblown thing?
I think it's a society. Is that right? Is that a word?
That is the word. Societal.
There we go.
Is the word of the day
on
the FTR podcast.
I think that's a societal thing. I just think it's just human nature now. But we, as older people, and even people who sit on the outside, who probably still do the same thing at their jobs, we sit on the outside and we can't believe it. I cannot fathom being a young wrestler, being an older wrestler in the business, and seeing Jake the Snake Roberts in my locker room at talent viewing and not going up and saying, please tell me about psychology. Please explain to me wrestling psychology.